My name is Stephan Joppich, and I'm a writer. I'm a philosophy student, but my name used to be, at least online, Leo Sharp. And maybe there are some people here who've been following me for quite some time and remember this name. But yeah, today's session is really all about sharing that journey, and it's actually not that much about me. I want to make it more about you. If you have any questions about pen names, any uncertainties, doubts, and want to hear your input from someone who has experienced both writing under a pen name and their real name. So please do use the Q&A function. You can just click the blue button on the bottom right to ask a question. And also, please do let me know if you cannot hear me. I suppose since I don't see anyone complaining yet, that works fine. So yeah, I just want to set the scene. I just want to quickly share my own story, and then I'll hopefully attempt to answer all your questions, or you can even request to come on stage, I believe. But yeah, I want to make this interactive and not just where I vomit words in your face. So it all started in March 2021 when I was still, at the time, I was still doing like a master's program in engineering, and it was the midst of the pandemic and lockdown, and I had suddenly this strong urge to start writing online. But that also intimidated me, right? I was still like, writing was just like an experiment. It just came to me one day, and I was like, maybe I'll try that. So instead of writing under my real name, which is Stephan Joppich, I started writing under the pen name Leo Sharp, and I took great depths. I went to great lengths to make this a reality. So I created social media accounts, email addresses. I even had a domain, Leo Sharp blog, which now doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, why did I do this? I think looking back, there are like three main reasons that really convinced me not to start writing under my real name initially. And I suppose many of you might be able to relate to them. The first one was that I simply didn't feel ready as a writer. So before that point, before starting to write online, I'd never written anything in professional context besides some academic stuff. So in this sense, my pen name was really a shield. Like if I ever got criticism from someone about my writing, it would just be shielded by my pen name, and I wouldn't be criticized, my pen name would be criticized. So it was sort of a way to dodge the criticism. The second reason was maybe a bit weird, but at the time I was convinced that my name is not easily recognizable in international context. So especially in this writing world, like I write in English, obviously, I thought it would be much better and much more professional to have like an English sounding name. And at the same time, I was reading all these authors and bloggers like James Clear and Austin Kleon and Mark Manson, and their names just roll off the tongue. And I thought, oh, I want that. And I thought Leo Sharp would rank nicely in that line of professional names. The third reason I chose a pen name was, and I'm sure many can relate to this, I suppose it's the most common reason of choosing a pen name, and it's that I simply was afraid of being found out, or that I was afraid that I would publish something and my ex-boss or future boss would come up to me and say like, well, this is this is embarrassing what you wrote there, and I don't think I want a person like you in our company. Stuff like that, or even just friends or family. I just didn't feel ready to match my thoughts. A very intimate thing when you think about it. Like writing is so intimate, and I just wasn't ready to make that step where I match my intimate thoughts and ideas with my real name, but instead wanted to use a pen name as a deflection. And I must say, for 12 months, this worked out brilliantly. Like my pen name got me started. It took away the fear of starting to write online and put my ideas out there. And I felt a lot more freedom writing under a pen name. But again, like there's a pattern among the reasons why I chose my pen name, and that's fear. Like I was afraid of not being good enough. I was afraid that my name wasn't good enough or not compatible enough. And I was afraid of being found out or like being exposed. So the first time I started doubting my choice of being Leo Sharp online, being my pen name, was when I connected to other writers on Medium and off the platform, and we would get on a phone call or something, and then they would start calling me Leo, and that just felt strange to me because my pen name didn't really serve the purpose anymore that I chose it for. Like I chose it for as to be a facade and a mask, but when I connected to writers, I wanted them to know my real name, right? My real me. So it sort of blocked that connection, or at least that's what it felt like to me. And also, I think the point where I really started taking steps toward abandoning my pen name was when I played this game with a friend, and it was like a game where you asked each other questions. And one of these questions was, it went like this, like about work, if I had real courage, ... and then you had to finish the sentence. And I almost knew immediately that if I had real courage, I would abandon my pen name and would start writing under a real name. Because again, my pen name was born out of fear, and courage would be the way to diminish this fear and to overcome it. So after 12 months it was pretty on the day, pretty much 12 months of Leo Sharp, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. What's the worst that can happen? And I mean, I must admit, it was such a stressful experience to suddenly see my real name under the things I was publishing, and it was like, oh no, they're gonna find out, and they're like, my real name is not good enough. But slowly I started realizing that people don't even care that much about your name. They care about the message you put out and the way you write or communicate or express ideas. And so ever since, I honestly never regretted it since the day I chose to write under my real name. But just let me say that it's not, that this is just my experience, right? There are so many approaches to writing under a pen name, and what it really comes down to is how you feel with that decision, because how you feel about your name is going to reflect in your writing. And so there are many very valid scenarios where it makes sense to write under a pen name, and also many valid scenarios where it makes more sense to write under a real name. But it doesn't even need to be this strict. It could also be that you write under both, like a pen name and your real name. Or, as in my case, you can start under a pen name if it helps you just get the word out there. And then when you realize, okay, this pen name as a tool has served me, and I can now abandon it and embrace my real name. That's also a totally valid option. So now I just really want to use the rest of the time we have in this session to answer some questions. And I don't know if you want to join me on stage and talk. You can also request. I hope I'm going to be able to see that. Earlier this day, I had two other talks where not all requests refreshed immediately. So I hope I can see everything. Okay. Let's start with this one. This is the first question. How did I come up with my pen name, and if it had any meaning to me? Yeah, I think I came up with it because I always found Leonard to be a nice name, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna shorten this. And then the last name was supposed to be a reflection of my brand, so I wanted to. I know it's a bit naive, but I wanted to like sharp writing. I wanted to reflect my sharp writing to be reflected in my sharp name. And also, I was very much, as I mentioned earlier, deluded to some degree by needing to have a English-sounding name, which is, of course, not a valid concern. By the way, fun fact, I later found out after creating this name that Leo Sharp was in fact a drug mole. And so when you Google Leo Sharp, you'll find his whole story. And it's I think there's even a movie about him. Okay, anyway, I hope that answers your question. But also there is there are pen name generators online, and that helped me like play with some ideas. So if you just Google like pen name generator, you'll find plenty of options. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, this is an interesting one by Zeitgespenst. What do you think about using a pen name, but without making a secret of your real name? For example, by linking your social media profiles. That's an interesting one. I suppose the pen name would then serve just as an artistic vehicle, but it could totally be a valid option if you want. I mean, then I think to me that would the only purpose I would see in that pen name would be that it sort of reinforces the message you write about, because obviously there's no function of the pen name to conceal your real name because it's linked. I hope that makes sense. Oh yeah, I think this is a very important question. By Reality Track. Have you ever written about anything or anyone that made you concerned about your safety? I read about my experience with domestic abuse, and as much as I want to scream it out loud, I worry about retaliation, both from my ex and from those who disbelieve or judge me as a victim. I think this is a very important and a great question. I unfortunately cannot. I never had anything that I wrote that was truly intimate. So I can't share a experience where I could answer this question with. But I think in cases like these, it makes a lot of sense to choose a pen name, and it can be a powerful weapon to get that important message out there, and to let people hear it, while at the same time protecting yourself from others who might disagree, who might not be happy with that message. So I think, just from my experience, I would in that case recommend a pen name, but just because it can be a powerful tool. Let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, so this sort of touched on the question we just had, like what's the worst that can happen by using a pen name? And I think it's exactly that, what we just talked about. It's a safety concern, and if you share like a very intimate message, but at the same time, it could also be oh, sorry, I think I misunderstood the question. So I just argued what's the worst that could happen with a real name, but the worst that can happen with a pen name is like what makes a pen name. So in other words, what makes a pen name better than a real name? Like, why shouldn't we just all write under pen names? I think that's how you mean the question. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And I found that for one, like it made the connection feel unreal when I like talk to people in real life or on the phone, like other writers. That there was a barrier between us because they were calling me by my wrong name. Also, it could be that like another problem I saw for me, that it was just very hefty to explain my pen name. Like when I told people that I'm a writer and that I have a blog and stuff, they asked me like, oh yeah, where can I find you? And then I had to make this weird detour where I explained to them like, oh no, I don't write it under my real name, and it's this name. And I think using a pen name can to some degree be self-sabotage, because at least in my case, because the name was created out of an urge that my real name wasn't good enough, and that my real name doesn't really help me get my message out there. But again, if you create the pen name out of a genuine safety concern, then it makes total sense to choose a pen name. So I that was a bit of a confusing answer. I hope that makes sense. Okay, the Q&A is still loading. Let's see, we have a question. By Anonymous. I suppose this is rather medium related, or in general, like freelance writing related. If my pen name made it harder to get published in publications, and that was never the case for me. Some publications specify that they only want writers who write under their real name, which I can't really understand, because I think, as we've talked about, there are some genuine reasons that make a pen name necessary. But yeah, short answer is no. I personally had never any problems with my pen name. I even made a freelance contract with it, so that seems to be no problem. Let's see. The Q&A is a bit tricky to deal with, but I hope Okay, here's Sydney asks a rather specific question, but I think it's interesting. What are the potential pitfalls of writing under 2 or more names from a business or tax standpoint? Or is this simply a non-issue? Well, first of all, I'm not entitled to give tax advice, but generally, at least like what it's like to write on platforms is that the pen name and the real name can both be connected to the same bank account, and so that's not an issue as far as I know. So like the pen name is still on the outside and is displayed as a pen name, but behind that is all your banking information, and that stays concealed from the so you can totally match your bank account under your real name with your pen name, and also connect your bank account to multiple names. Okay, more questions. Gosh, it's a bit. I mean, you probably don't see all the questions because I have to like approve them. But yeah, there are quite a few questions coming in, and I'm trying to read through all of them and see what makes the most sense. I think this is another interesting question by Avila. And so the comment is, and do you feel like you are as free in your writing now as you were while under your pen name? Yes and no. I think my real name has actually helped me embrace topics that are truly important to me. So like when you write under a real name, you really become aware of the things that are connected with your name. So when people Google your name and they will associate your name, like they will see associations with your name. And then I think when I had pen name, I was less aware of this because I mean, what's like people can just Google my pen name and I don't care because it's not connected to my real life. But now, ever since I wrote under my real name, I started thinking a lot more about the message I want to put out in the world. And one of the big steps I made after abandoning my pen name was to write about loneliness, which is a topic that's very close to my heart and very important to me, and that's very important to me to get the message out there. And strangely, I didn't take that seriously enough when I wrote under a pen name because it was just like a way to explore. And I remember when I wrote under a pen name, I wrote a lot of like self-help and like, yeah, it's a bit cringy, but like cheap self-help, like, I don't know, like all the advice you see everywhere. And I just saw that was popular. And so I just copied it. And now I think about much more like my personal stories and again, like what I want people to connect with me. So in a sense, I feel freer now that I write under my real name. On the other hand, like why I started the answer with yes and no. I don't feel freer in the sense that there are some stories that are very intimate to me and where I really doubt if this is gonna, if I really want to publish this under my real name. But even then, it's like I often find myself coming back to why, like, what's the matter if I publish this intimacy under my real name? And more often than not, it takes a little more courage to publish something, but in the end, it feels more authentic and more real. I hope that makes sense and answers your question. We have about 5 minutes left. Let's see if I can find another question. Here's another question by Cheryl. Let's see. I hope you can see it. And it's, can readers find the real author's identity through search channels? I could never use my real name for my memoir. Need to change names, gender, and scenario to be safe, so almost fiction. So if I understand this question correctly, it's if, like, when you write under a real name, like under a pen name, if people can still find your real name behind that pen name when they, like, through search engines or whatever. That's how I interpret the question. That has never be the case for me. So when you write under, like, a pen name, even though sometimes you have to give, like, legal clarifications behind the name, what other people always see is the pen name. So your real name is never displayed if you choose to make your public name the pen name. I hope I understood that question correctly. Okay, I think there might be time for one more question. I see some thank yous, and I'm glad you enjoyed the session. You're very welcome. I'm glad it was helpful. Let's see if there's another question. Oh yeah, I think this is a good one. It's by, well, where did it go? Yeah, it's by Chelly. And the comment is, I use a pen name because I don't want to upset the people I know that I write about if I say something negative about them. Do you ever write about people you know? Do you worry about them reading it and being angry at you? Yeah, I think this is a great question. So yes, I do sometimes write about people I know, although so far it's only been, like, I only occasionally publish personal essays. And of course I worry if people are going to be angry at me. So I actually talked about this with a friend recently, and we sort of came to the conclusion that if it's really, oh, I get an announcement that I have audio issues, but I don't know if that's true. Okay, I don't think so. I'm just gonna try to keep responding to the question. So, like, one way, of course, is to ask the person if you can write about them. Of course, if the relationship is tricky, that's another topic. Another way is, even if you write something that happened in your life, you can fictionalize elements of the memoir or personal essay to make the person unrecognizable. So even though they might recognize that it's them when they read it, they don't have any like valid claims. And I mean, as long as you're not bashing a person in your writing, and as long as you're just genuinely sharing your story, then there is nothing wrong with writing about other people, even if they're angry with you, because it's just your perspective. Okay, I see we're already approaching 12 a.m. Eastern time, or 12 p.m. I don't know what it's in the system. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been helpful. If you want to follow me, you can just, the best place is probably Medium. It's just my real name now, so Stephan Joppich. And otherwise, I'm sorry if there are any questions I couldn't get to. I tried to answer as many as possible. If you have any further questions, you can always email me. It's all on the information is all on my Medium profile. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the Medium day, and enjoy your Saturday and